including our Māori TV visitor. Look forward to watching that later. Patty, would you please open our meeting for us?
Kia ora, Chair. E raro te tuanui o tēnei hore o tātou, e kia nei ko te kaunihira ārohe a te matau a Māui, a tēnei te mihi kia tātou, me ki rā koutou e noho wharirau nei, kai roto ki tēnei wahanga o te hatu. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi atu. Kai o ki rā ki a koe rā aroha, hoki mai rā kai roto ki tēnei whare, me ki rā i āru nei tango whakāhua, hei mātaki mo te au katoa, tēnei te mihi atu. Nō reira, e āku nei rangatira tēnā koutou katoa. On your behalf, have I welcomed those others who are sitting in our gallery space, and also to Aroha Treacher, who's sitting at the end on behalf of the karere. I've welcomed them on your behalf. Nō reira, I've put a little prayer in front of us. It's a specially selected karakia. So I haven't deviated from there because Will's just said I was all ready to say that when I was there. So we're going to go from the new old up to the new. And can I just say that on Monday this week, our regional leaders, our mayors, chairs and CEs, they launched our new digital app, Te Kupenga. It will be downloadable on your mobile devices from midday next Monday. And you'll receive some instructions and links as how to do that. And from that time forward, then all I'll be saying is, please turn to page such and such on your digital app. That'll be good. So our karakia for this morning, I'm just going to read through the left-hand side for those who have the slip. It is the Lord's Prayer. And I'll set the pace. E tō mātou matui te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tae mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea tia tau e pai ai ki runga ni te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. Ko mai kia mātou ai anei he tarama mātou mō tēnei rā. Muru o mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga e harana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e ka wea kia whakawaia. Engari, aka orangi a mātou I te kiri. Nuru hoki I rangatiratanga. Te kaha me te karoria. Ake. Āmene and ko will. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mātina kina kinta. Kia mātaratara kitai. E ia kia na kia takura. E teo, e huka, e hauru, si hei maunua. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Patty. You do a wonderful job, and so do you, Will. Okay, thank you very much. We have no apologies today, do we? None. Any notices?
Just, Mr. Chairman, that I sit here as an advisory capacity and I have no vote. I'd like to have that noted, please.
Thank you, Mike. We'll note that.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to take that for Mike's cordial and sit here as an advisory capacity even though we're treating partner in all jurisdictions. Shut up.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll note those two notices. Thank you very much. You don't have to receive the notices, do we? No. Okay. Any conflict of interest? No conflict of interest. Confirmation of the minutes, previous minutes, for corrections, for accuracy.
I'm happy to move the minutes as they
The
are.
second.
Mover and the seconder. All those in favour of receiving the minutes?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. Follow-up from the previous council meeting.
Chair, we'll take those as read. We do have a number of attachments this week which relate to requested documents from council and provide any further clarification on those should that be required.
Questions on that?
Oh, just on the Lagoima. As I've read this to the end, it seems that the issue is about the notification of the individual. And I thought what we had agreed previously was that the list as was previously provided would be provided in the future, but anonymised, that the name of the individual would not be there, but we'd have a request and what the substance of it was, and then that the council would put the information up on its website so anyone can see it. So can we have the list reinstated, but without the person's name being on it?
So if you agree, through you, Mr. Chair, the proposed is that we will include that as part of the organisational performance report, so it'll have everything for the 3-month period on a 3-monthly basis in that format. So it'll be a list of everything that was received, and if that's sufficient, or...
I would personally prefer to go back to it as being a monthly report that comes out on, like they're doing this section here. So we get, you know, follow-ups and so on, and the thing there, we used to always have a monthly report of what the things just happen every month. It's then more up to date, 3 months out.
Certainly would be more up to date. Through you, Chair, I would like to come back to the next council meeting just with advice about whether that is practical. I have raised this issue, and I do understand that there is a fair amount of manual work involved with the compilation of that, and therefore it was felt that 3 months as part of the organisational performance report was most efficient, but understand that it will be somewhat out of date by the time it's reported, given the cycle of Lagoinas. So we'll just come back to you on whether that's...
Timeliness is a key issue.
Understood.
Yeah.
Craig, then Neil.
Thanks. Just item 2. Last meeting I asked how many of the 217 sites being photographed, so we build our knowledge of riparian strips across Hawke's Bay were urban, and the answer you've provided there is none of them are urban. And unless there's something to add to that, I'm very interested and a little bit disappointed actually in that we don't seem to have knowledge of our urban, most polluted waterways across Hawke's Bay. Resources are going into that, and even the explanation there is we will be getting information, but we actually don't know what it is. So that implies we don't know what we've asked for. So if there's any further comment to that, or perhaps there's further knowledge on our riparian strips, particularly of the Karangu catchment, I'd be very interested in having that updated.
So my understanding is that the reason for the focus on the rural environment is that the sites have been selected to be representative to build a statistical model so that we understand the spatial extent of riparian planting across the whole region, of which our urban waterways, as Councillor you understand, is a tiny proportion of the length of the 22,000 kilometres of waterways that we have in the region, but understand that they do have a high significance with respect to the contaminant load and their proximity to our communities. So that would be a separate piece of work, and I'm happy to report back to Council on when and how we might be able to undertake such work.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just in regard to the January items, item 4, CHB level of compliance, etc., wastewater treatment. I note the follow-up reports HBRC and CHB are regularly meeting to discuss treatment and disposal concerns. I wonder if the Chief Executive can comment when the last meeting was held, or when meetings were held in January, and does those discussions include any compliance actions?
So the last meeting that I was involved with, which was with the Chief Executive of the District Council and their asset management staff and our own consenting staff, was just prior to Christmas, I believe. While we have regular ongoing engagement and have this side of Christmas on this specific matter, there hasn't been a formal meeting at that level, but at officer level I expect there probably has been. And I know that Malcolm's here, so he can provide an update whether there has been anything this side of Christmas.
Just a supplementary to that, Mr. Chair. Are those meetings recorded and minuted? What's the nature of the recording that goes on for those?
Get Malcolm to come to the
Malcolm, could you come to the table and give your answer? Up the front, perhaps, or you can borrow one of these little speakers.
Question being, are they recorded? No, they're not. They're reasonably informal. We're just keeping in touch.
So the meetings we're having more regularly with the district councils in the asset management space are being recorded and minuted, and so I'm happy to take away as an action item whether we that these meetings do have a stronger paper trail in relation to the ongoing discussions.
Yes, if we could. I think my question goes to those other discussions with the Waira District Council and with the Napier City Council, so that we've got a very strong record of engagement on those discussions.
We'll come back to council on that, Chair.
Any other issues on those follow-up? Jareth?
Yeah, I've got one. It looks like in regards to Pettigrew Green Arena car park, as the management staff have met with the trust, and possibly we should have actually mentioned this earlier, currently we actually have got a cycleway over that stop bank, and I would like to see that they actually have preference over any cars crossing that stop bank. The public seems to be have an interest in this and really feeling that they have a cycleway that actually is their own. Now they actually possibly will be asked to actually give way to cars, and they feel that actually is totally inappropriate. So if we can have this in the discussion, there's a way that actually the cycleway actually has got preference and right of way going forward. That's just a request going forward, if that's possible.
So we'll obviously need to take into account safety issues and how the interaction between cyclists and vehicles are managed. I don't know whether, Chris, you've got any comment you want to make on that, or we can certainly build that into the discussions and report back.
I think we take it on board, but we certainly need to take the advice of, I guess, roading experts about how that works in practice. But I think it's a good comment, and certainly take it on board and incorporate into the discussion.
Wouldn't it be simply just put down a pedestrian crossing?
That was my initial reaction. Then I thought cyclists on pedestrian crossings might be an ambiguity, if you like.
But cyclists do use pedestrian crossings.
Okay, come on, let's move along. Is there any other issues regarding the follow-ups? If not, John?
Three, just on Pedestrian Green, with the consent conditions that you set, within their cultural impact assessment, is that they're going to include engagement with mana whenua. I've just been talking to the whānau Waihuki. Is it on?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
as long as it's involved.
Good.
And I know there's concerns about that area. And the other one is item 6 for the wastewater of Waddle District Council. I understand there's ongoing issues with the SCADA or whatever it is. A whole lot of earthworks going on up there, and just want to, can anybody give me an update?
So look, I understand that last week there were 2 abatement notices, I think, issued to Waddle District Council in relation to their wastewater. Mike, have you got any additional commentary you want to make on that?
Not at this stage, no. So 2 abatement notices and 7 improvements.
Do you know if they've fixed the current problem?
I think they did. Yes, the others today, so I'll do that.
Thank you.
Can you get back to Michelle and perhaps Charlie to send them an email on that? Okay, if there's no other follow-ups, then we'll move straight to significant activities. Okay, no, sorry, we've got to receive the
I'll
doesn't
move.
say so,
Yep.
but we will receive the follow-up. Henny White and Rick, all those in favour?
Aye.
Okay, item 5, significant activities. I'll go straight to questions, I think.
Yep, Chair, I have 2 questions.
Chair, just before you do, can I just draw Council's attention to item 14, just a good news story that we have secured $996,000 from the 1 Billion Trees Fund from Te Urarako for native planting across the region, working with private landowners as well as some public land as well. So that's a great development, and we'll continue to report to Council on that project as that's rolled out. I understand that will be for native plantings this winter and the following winter, and just continues to build on the momentum we have in that area. Great.
Through the Chair, I'll ask a question about that item. In which sub-catchment are you planning to plant over the next 2 years?
I don't have that information to hand, and as I look around, Ian.
So, look, I can't tell you, but what we'll do is
Fantastic. Secondary to that question is, will there be any urban waterways? Is any planning to plant urban waterways as a part of that fund? Okay.
I understand that yes, the HDC land, and there's some of our land as well, which are public waterways in the peri-urban environment are planned for planting.
Fantastic. Okay, last question. Point 17 with the TV update. Ian, if you could let us know what sort of resource the council's contributing in terms of helping solve that, and what other agencies are involved.
So, TV management is an Osprey role. Osprey has the resources and the legislation to run that program. We are very tightly connected to that, and we are meeting regularly with Osprey on the TV management front. But just to clarify, I had updated you in a workshop, I think in January. That's the same property, so it's not another further one. It's the same one I updated you about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we've made further positive properties since.
Thank you.
Neil and Charlie.
Oh, yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I want to turn to whole of region, a second item, marine and coast. I'm uncertain if this was discussed at the Environment Committee meeting, but I'll ask it anyway. It talks about the key ecological area report. I wonder, Ian, if you could tell us when that's available, and what's the plan for feeding that information back to us.
You need to probably come up, I'm sorry.
Possibly stay there. I've got a question as well.
We need some microphones down the back.
Yeah, we do.
That'll just encourage them.
With the mute button now.
Look, the report is available, and I hadn't actually thought about plans to bring it to you, but what we could do is bring an update to EOCC in May.
Okay, Jeff, we'll go straight to you while you've got in.
Okay, good, excellent. Mine is actually related to point 14 to 21, and this is to do with, no, it's right across, it's a bit of a, so what this actually means is Will and I went to a field day a week ago, and deer came as often a talking point. So when we're actually going to do replanting, planting of natives, in even urban areas, but predominantly rural areas, deer is a real problem. And where they actually were replanting river beds, they were actually putting deer fences up. The landowners were putting deer fences up to keep deer out, because otherwise it's impossible to establish. So if we're actually really going to establish and recloaking the Hawke's Bay, we possibly need to look at deer, because deer are so destructive when it comes to new ones.
Mate.
And goats.
Absolutely, and of recent times, goats on Napier Hill. So, look, absolutely. So, our most significant investment in our ecosystem prioritisation sites is actually deer fencing. So, we go in and deer fence and then put in professional hunters to remove the deer. Pigs are another issue. Deer are an issue across the whole country at the moment, not just in this region. Department of Conservation actually have staff dedicated in a management unit trying to work out programs to address the growing deer problem. For us, one of the biggest challenges is, particularly in forestry, deer and pigs are prevalent, and they spill out across into the broader landscape. But it's an issue that will be part of our thinking in terms of the overall biosecurity program review, but it's not an easy problem, because deer are quite mobile relative to other species like possums, deer and pigs in particular. And your
your traditional control methods that work well on possums obviously don't work for deer. And the most widespread and arguably effective control mechanism is 1080, and that has a whole lot of social licence issues and community concern at the moment. So it's a very challenging problem. But we absolutely focus on deer management primarily for our high priority biodiversity sites, our habitats. That's one of our biggest focus areas.
Okay, and can we get, as a council, some more visibility on that? Because we haven't actually seen a lot of the data around that, of actually the cost, what has been implemented. It's really important. So if that's really possible, it'd be really great. Thank you.
Maybe we could take you out and show you.
Have we got a gun licence? That's maybe one problem.
Craig, I'll go to Charlie first and then come to you.
Yeah, just say just in keeping with Henry's question about the TB update, it just seems an imbalance of reporting. There's such a lot about predator-free Hawke's Bay, but they're not aimed at looking after TB areas. Who's responsible? It's not there.
So the management of TB is the responsibility of Osprey, who are a levy-funded body who have animal control monitoring and TB as their two key focus areas. So we, in not wanting to sound like we completely divorce ourselves from it, because we don't. We work very closely with Osprey, but the management of TB to either prevent TB occurring in a region or responding when TB does occur in a region sits with Osprey, because they have the legislative tools, the technical knowledge and the staff and the resources to do it that we don't. But we tightly sit alongside them in managing that.
There's no actual report on how they're containing it.
No, but we have got Osprey coming to the EICC meeting in May as part of our annual agreement with you to keep them connected to you in a reporting sense. So they're going to come and talk to you about their work generally as well as the TB situation in May.
Just before I do come to you, Craig, are they Osprey responsible for deer and pigs as well?
Well, they're responsible for any vector that carries TB. So deer certainly carry TB, pigs less so, possums, absolutely. So they're interested in vector control. So what carries it, what moves it around, and keeping those things under control so that the disease doesn't spread into the farmed animal herd, the cattle herds.
Because certainly the activity of pigs is affecting the viability of farming in those areas now. It's a serious problem. Craig?
Thanks. Regarding recreational water quality, the swim through summer monitoring has been reported up to Land and Water Aotearoa, excuse me, site. Is the karamu safe to wade in and swim in? And if it is, could you show me where's that reported back up to that website?
I don't know, but I can help you get onto the website and we'll be able to see real time. So the information is fed onto the LAO website, the address is there. You can quickly zoom into our water quality monitoring sites. Our recreational program typically focuses on our bathing beaches, but we will.
Okay,
I can point you to the LAO website.
So a high-level question is the karamu safe to swim in, or are parts of it not?
I don't know because I haven't got that information in front of me, but I would suspect it's probably mixed.
It's certainly variable by time of year, and particularly when following rainfall, certainly wouldn't be. Look, I understand of the recreational bathing sites, the one that's related to that is the Clive, where there is a large amount of community activity, and it is not one of our better sites in terms of its fecal contaminant loading, and so certainly at times it's unsafe to swim, but at other times it is safe to swim. So it's a mixed bag at that point.
And we put as much resources into that, monitoring that, the karamu catchment in particular, as much as the beach sites and the various stream and outflow sites?
Yes.
We do.
So, there's a regular program of monitoring. In fact, our river monitoring extends year round. Our recreational bathing beaches is a seasonal thing. So river monitoring typically happens more frequently, in some places and some sites monthly, relative to a bathing beach site which might be 5 months.
Sure.
Further questions? So, Ian, just so I'm quite clear in my mind, so the monitoring that does take place on the Karamu and that catchment area is up to the level of bathing. Is that what I'm hearing?
So we monitor for a range of parameters,
I understand
including
that.
E. coli.
Yep.
And there will be advice on the website around the current conditions and knowledge of E. coli. The point the Chief Executive makes is really pertinent though, because the monitoring is typically retrospective, so we might have sampled last week, for example, reported on that. If it rains tomorrow and flushes contaminants into those systems,
changes.
It'll change it. And so we advise people of those risks on the website as well.
Thank you.
If you go to the LAR website, it says, can I swim here? And if you register swimming sites, then they monitor it, because we only had the ski club, and now the yacht club is monitored in Whitehall. So, and it's true, I don't think any waterway here is safe if there's been rain. At the moment, we had rain last week and the river's still dirty, so I wouldn't be advising anybody to go for a swim. But the other thing is that you send it on Monday, it's got to go through the Petri dish and blah, 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 and it doesn't land here until tonight.
Yeah, look at.
Night.
There is a delay. I mean, we have to send samples away, they're cultured, we get the results, and then we report them. So it is always retrospective. There has been a lot of work put into how we can forecast it, and the best example is Auckland Council have developed a multi-million-dollar model that models rainfall and flows with fecal contamination and can be predictive about water quality and is pretty accurate. Requires a significant investment and something that we haven't done yet.
Thank you. Any other issues? Two, Will first, and then Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Just on number 61 on FEMPS. So says here that some properties still remaining to submit their FEMP, and I'd argue that probably enough time's passed now. So in terms of considering options, including enforcement, we're probably past that now. So I'd quite like a follow-up next month as to what is happening with those. It's probably not, it doesn't seem fair on the 1,100 or so landowners that have submitted a FEMP. I think it's only 5 or 6, half dozen. So if we could have a follow-up on that. And also to counter that, we obviously need to make it as easy as possible. And just had reports of dairy farmers using the Fonterra service to provide a FEMP that they are not being accepted by Hawke's Bay Regional Council. So if we could just have a comment on that.
Chair, we'll follow up next month on the question of the Fonterra FEMPs. There is a accredited provider regime, and it will come down to whether or not those FEMPs meet our regulatory requirements. And there's a significant amount of work going on at the national level that we're involved in to align the existing industry schemes with the national regulations, and that is involving some upgrade also of the industry farm plans. The Tiaki plan, for example, that Fonterra delivers is being upgraded to meet some of those expectations. In relation to the non-compliance for FEMPs, we're down to 3, I'm advised, 2 of which are low-intensity farms, so they don't require the full farm environment plan. But we do have one that is a genuinely outstanding FEMP, and an abatement notice has been served on that landowner. So we've sort of followed up now to the very, very last of these, and of course we're now into the new round of requiring FEMPs to be updated, which for most people is May, but for those that require resource consent, it is by the end of this week.
Thank you, Jared.
Good. This will be my last one. Point 41 about Lake Totira and the work that we as a council together with Tangata Whenua have done in that area is amazing and is astounding. And I understand, James, there's some good news about Lake Totira that you could share with us.
So look, I understand on the weekend members of the public, including local iwi, were able to swim in Lake Tutera, which has been a long time coming. It has had variable water quality for many years, and there's been a considerable amount of work put in by tangata whenua, the community, and our own staff working in partnership to improve water quality. There's been some innovative science undertaken there with the introduction of a bubbler to try and improve circulation, and work right up the catchment in terms of land use practice. We've still got a long way to go, and it will be from time to time, I'm sure, that we'll still have water quality issues until we've really dealt with the source issues right to the nth degree, but we're in pretty good shape at the moment, and it was great that people were able to enjoy swimming there once again.
Great, excellent, thank you.
Number 70, Mr Chairman, just regards Silver Farms. I see submissions closed 22nd. We know how many submissions came in?
I'm not sure, Malcolm, do you know?
Yep. Two on time. We were wondering if it was getting later, but I don't believe there has been two submissions.
Anyone?
So this is in regard to regulation. So through you, Chair, point 53, the Napier City Council municipal wastewater discharge. Was there any enforcement action taken against Napier City Council? Can you just run us through that, please?
Yes, there was. So upon being advised by Napier City Council that their regular monitoring of their outfall pipe had revealed leakage, we issued an abatement notice to Napier City Council, setting a timeline for that to be remedied. That abatement notice had to be extended due to weather issues and the availability of the dive crew to complete the work and some of the complexity with completing that work. But ultimately we got the outcome in the end, and we were satisfied that Napier City Council did throw the appropriate resources at the issue in a timely manner to repair the outfall. They are also accelerating work in their long-term plan on the replacement of that outfall pipe, noting that it is aged, and we would expect that it will result in further leaks in time until it's replaced with something like today.
Yeah, thank you. Second question around point 54, or Marunui landfill expansion. Could we get some numbers on how many submissions and when hearings are likely to be had?
Malcolm?
Work submissions, I can't tell you the number, but has just closed.
We'll report back on that.
Okay, thank you. That would be useful. Thank you.
Are there any other? Michelle?
Yes, so the tūrerako, I presume it's Matariki tūrerako, since they do the native plant. Be good to know how many trees that is, or that also, because I know now they fund the trees, the preparation of the trees, the aftercare. Is that all part of that 996?
Yes, it is. So there is funding for spraying and releasing and the ongoing maintenance. I think over something like a 3-year period or 2 or 3 year period to ensure establishment. So we have gone for funding for the full end-to-end, but we can certainly report back on the plant numbers.
I don't think they cover pest control, do they? No.
That's stretching my understanding at the moment of what's in the contract.
Pest control with the Matariki tūrerako, I don't think they covered it in the fund, do they?
Not a pest control, but we do have that as part of our government.
And the other question was around just this pest control component that Jeff mentioned, an issue for Wairoa, as I mentioned before, goats. But I'm also mindful that the pigs and the deer also are food source for our people, their mahinga kai, so for tangata whenua, especially if they're inland. And as a girl that was brought up on wild pork, my father was a hunter, and that was one of our main sources of kai. So just be mindful when you're wanting to take away that food source for people. Thank you.
I think we are. Any other? Okay, we'll close this, but I just have one sort of little comment, James, on 44. It is really concerning that we have that many consents that are sort of in abeyance. It's a big concern in our for the economics of and confidence in our community. So I just want to make that comment for the record, really.
Chair, can I?
It's not a great situation.
Look, certainly the tank plan change has taken us much longer to complete notify than we had ever anticipated when these consents were on a rolling schedule of review. Our current thinking in relation to the issue that you raise is that we will start processing these consents at the point that the tank plan change has been approved by the commissioners. And that is to say that even if the plan is appealed to the Environment Court, we won't wait until resolution of those appeals. We will start processing based on the decisions of the commissioners, which we are legally entitled to do, but it does create a little bit of uncertainty for consent holders, given that there will probably be some matters which will wind their way through the courts for some time.
Brett, you got one final?
I move that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council receives and notes the significant HBRC activities looking forward through to March 2021.
Thanks for helping me on my job. Seconder? All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Call for my items not on the agenda.
Goats on Napier Hill.
Goats on Napier Hill.
You weren't offered one. You weren't offered one.
National Freshwater Conference.
Just two. Thank you very much.
You're on items not on the agenda?
Yeah. You got
Can I
one,
have
Jim?
one, please?
You certainly can.
Fellow councillor?
Sure.
Thank you. Fastgate.
What's that?
Fastgate.
Fast gate.
You've heard me talk about it before.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move to item 7. It's a decision-making item, the annual plan for adoption.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pass to Jess in a moment to walk us through the financial elements of this. But before I do so, just make a very high-level comment that it's very pleasing that we're now at the point that we can present to you the annual report for 2019-20 for adoption, given some of the process challenges we've had getting this done in a timely manner. I'd note that it was something of an extraordinary year, both, I guess, positively in terms of significant unexpected funds being received by council, particularly from central government for a range of things. And so our year 2 of our long-term plan, which was already a significant step up in the organisation's activities, was added to even more. But of course we also hit the headwinds of a drought early in 2020, and then the COVID response, which had a significant displacement effect on the council's activities and work programs. Having said that, we obviously supported a massive regional welfare response effort during lockdown, and also a considerable amount of activity supporting the rural community through drought. So it was a difficult year in many respects, and that made it relatively messy to manage financially with unplanned activities and things moving around, which Jess can speak to. But overall, as the annual report notes, the overwhelming majority of the level of service measures were met, and council did deliver on the services that it had undertaken to do so on behalf of the community, despite those headwinds of the year. So I'll pass now to Jess.
Thank you. So the annual report is available for adoption today. In an ordinary year, the annual report would be adopted by the 31st of October, so we have had quite a significant delay. There's been two parts of the delay. The first being Audit New Zealand extended the deadline to 31st of December originally for adoption for all entities across New Zealand, and that was primarily due to resourcing challenges from Audit New Zealand internally. One, they were struggling to get resource in to perform the audits across the country, and two, added level of detail and I suppose complexity auditing the impacts of COVID-19 on organisations. The second part of that was we had a further delay which arose during the peer review of the annual report, where it was noted that the methodology for valuing land and buildings for HPRC versus Napier Port was different, so using two different methodologies. So we have remedied that with Audit New Zealand over the last couple of months, and we have received an unmodified audit opinion, and we'll obviously be addressing that in future years around ensuring that we have a consistent methodology. So in terms of the financial results, an extraordinary year in that we had included the Napier Port IPO transaction, and the result of that was $107 million in one-off revenue, which flowed through the financial statements. So quite extraordinary when looking at prior year. Obviously, that's a significant transaction. $63 million of the funds raised are sitting at the HBRIC level, but still consolidated within the group. And the overall result was a favourable $24 million in funds achieved over and above what was expected. In terms of the day-to-day operations, excluding Napier Port IPO transaction, COVID-19 had a significant impact on investment income, particularly in that last half of the year. Investment income was $7 million less than we expected in the year, so that has contributed to the shortfall or the reduction in surplus compared to what was expected through the plan. In day-to-day delivery of activities and operations, most of the activities delivered, with the exception of overhead costs, performed largely in line with budget. We did see some cost pressures, specifically within those overhead categories. We've spoken to Council on a number of times about growing IT and technology costs, data storage, specifically being things that we have addressed in the current year, and in the long-term plan we're looking at opportunities to mitigate against those increasing costs on an annual basis. We had additional audit fees that's arisen from the complexity and the growth in the organisation, and additional people costs resulting from both growth and as a result of achieving some of that external funding. So that's an overview of the financials. We've got Rhonda and Tim here with us to take any technical questions on the financial statements themselves. I'd like to thank my staff, specifically Tim, who has put in a huge effort to get the annual report into a position for adoption today. So it's been a long journey, and it's a big job.
Cool. Thank you, Jess. We'll take questions now. Do we need to bring Tim and Rhonda up here just in case we need them? Since we don't have the high-tech thing which Ian's going to get us. But we'll have a bench down there, Ian. Okay. Rick, you had your hand up first. Just a question.
Just a quick compliment. I thought the report read really well. Very good effort. Just a suggestion. I know that far be it from me to tell the chair what to say. Far be it from me to put the words in the chief executive's mouth. But I did, one of the few people who have read your introduction. I thought one thing you could consider putting in there, there's a growing tension in our community between people's dissatisfaction with water quality, expectations of improvement, and our historical legacy we've got, and our capacity and resources to fix it. And that's one of those sorts of tension we've got. I just thought it would be worthwhile. Sure, we had COVID, sure we had those things, but this general drive to get things better, and we've got a legacy we've inherited, and the pressure on, because just can't do it on the existing rate bill.
It's an excellent question, right?
I said it was a suggestion. I was honest up to it. Suggestion.
Thank you very much. It is a good suggestion. Craig, is it a question or a suggestion?
It's a question. But preempt with thanks again to you and your team for working through and landing where we have. But just for clarity, can you just please confirm, you mentioned it in para 35, that although there's an accounting treatment differential between the council, HBRIC and the Port of Napier, and I absolutely appreciate you have no direct role in Port of Napier, but that interpretation by Audit General has no impact on them or their valuations, the way they're going to be treated by this council, even though they'll treat them differently. There are no implications for them. I think it's just important to get that on the record, that there are none.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Right, Neil, I'd like you to move.
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a seconder? Seconder, Rick. Neil?
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do want to take the opportunity as the Chair of the Corporate Strategic Committee involved closely with that, my colleague Craig, in terms of the FARS Committee. This is an extraordinary annual report, and one which I think, in my experience, has been extraordinarily well recorded and documented here, and I think I've seen a very significant enhancement of our accountability and transparency, and I want to thank Jess for leading a team that's done a superb job in that process. The report itself, the balance sheet shows a wonderful result, but underlying that, the optics on the accounts themselves are a very, very extraordinary year of management by staff, the team and council generally. What we're seeing is a major impact of COVID. We look back and think, gosh, we got off lightly, and I think we did in many respects. But for this council, there have been very serious consequences for our finances and the performance in terms of finance for the year. What we're seeing is that major drop in revenue from our expected revenue from our investments. We are seeing substantial additional expenditures, and you can see that in the consenting and compliance environment. We're seeing that in the emergency management and the like. So across the board, we're seeing impacts on the state of the accounts, and the consequence of that will be substantial for the ratepayer in the coming year. And I think that needs to be acknowledged, that as a consequence of a very, very extraordinary year, someone will pay the price for that, and it's ultimately the ratepayer. I do note, and Councillor Barker referenced the commentary from the Chief Executive and the Chair. I also note the commentary from the Māori Committee, and again, we're seeing the step change in engagement that's taking place at that level. So right across the organisation, we're seeing a whole new environment financially with the state of the balance sheet and the investments that are there now. There's a hugely increased level of, if you like, engagement on the assets of the organisation. Climate change is driving substantial energy into how we treat our assets. So right across the board, we're seeing this eclipse of the old and into a whole new trading environment. So therefore, we're relying on our team, particularly in the financial team, to be keeping us well abreast of that. And I'm delighted to see the level of performance here is a strong indicator that we're doing the right thing by the ratepayer and the council, and is reflected in this report. So, Mr. Chair, very happy to move the report.
Thank you, Neil. Rick? Nothing to add? Does anybody else have anything to add? I just want to endorse, sorry, Mike?
Just a comment more than anything, Mr. Chairman. I note that ECAM put out their annual report today and recommending a rate increase of 25%. So
That was at LTP, I think.
Yeah, sorry.
E1.
E1.
So, thanks, team. I think I endorse all of Neil's comments. It's a fantastic report. You're doing a fantastic job, and we got through COVID. We've done a lot of really good work lead-in up to that, which selling our 44% stake in the port has really bore out. So, and Neil alluded to that. So, thank you very much. Neil, do you want to finish this out? We're fine. So, all those in favour of receiving the annual report?
Aye.
Aye.
Recommendation of the Finance Committee? Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go to item 8, Māori representation.
Chair, I'll lead briefly on this paper, if that's all right with you.
Quick briefing.
Okay.
It won't be long. It'll be quick.
Wasn't my plan, Perry, but you can. I'm going to trust you here.
Gee. Hi, tēnā tātou. This is the Māori representation on Hawke's Bay Regional Council paper at page 43, item 8 on the agenda. The item provides the means for Council to decide its next steps in relation to Māori representation on Hawke's Bay Regional Council in response to the local electoral Māori wards and Māori constituencies amendment bill currently before Parliament. Probably a quick cast back so we understand the resolution that was set, which is the one that is in front of us today. On the 18th of November, the Council resolved to receive and consider the Māori representation on Hawke's Bay Regional Council staff report on that day, and instructed the Chief Executive to give notice to the electoral officer that a poll on the question of whether the region should be divided into one or more Māori constituencies is to be held at the next election on 8 October 2022, subject to legislative change in the interim, to be preceded by robust community engagement and consultation. That resolution in terms of the minutes was confirmed on the 25th of November last year. In terms of those amendments, it's at page 7 of your current paper in front of you. The local electoral Māori wards and Māori constituencies amendment bill is intended to improve the democratic representation of Māori interests, ensure equity and representation, and to provide a Māori voice in local decision making. To achieve this, the following changes have been made to the Local Electoral Act. 1, repeals the provisions in the Local Electoral Act that relate to polls on the establishment of Māori wards and constituencies. 2, prohibits binding council-initiated polls on whether to establish Māori constituencies, while retaining the right for councils to initiate non-binding polls to gauge public sentiment. And 3, establishes a transition period ending on 21 May this year, during which any local authority may, regardless of any previous decisions or previous poll outcomes, resolve to establish Māori constituencies for the 2022 local elections. The paper is otherwise as read, Chair. It lays out 4 options for our councillors to consider, and at your behest we have both myself and Leanne, who has procedural and process technical information to support or clarify any points in the paper. If you're happy for us to retain in our seats with the microphones in place rather than lead to the front, we can do that.
I'm happy for you to retain your seats. So I just want to make a comment. I want to thank staff, including you, Petty, for the enormous work you put into this paper and creating the options and the recommendations. But I don't want to take questions on the paper. I do want to, there has been discussion amongst councillors how they want to proceed with this, and I want to go straight to a recommendation that has been jointly crafted and will be presented by Mark right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can you put up on the board, please?
If I could just ask our team leader governance to put up the motion that the Chair's referred to. Now, this motion that you'll see shortly is tabled with the benefit of advice from our team leader governance, from Peria's Te Whakarai, and from our CEO. It's equally tabled with the benefit of considerable discussion with my colleagues on this topic over the past few months. There is a clear direction of travel here, and the motion is based on option 2 in the paper, but is more deliberate in its terms. Our proposal is to establish Māori seats, but the wording equally signals that we necessarily retain an open mind until we have listened to all views that may be expressed by the wider community on the topic. No decision could be more significant than a change to our constitutional makeup as a council, and so the proposal demands consultation regardless of how firm and clear the recommendations of our Māori committee are. We will also be able to benefit from staff advice on the detail of what this would mean in practice for all voters, both those on the Māori and general rolls, as we go through the process and in preparing for the representation review that would have to follow, assuming the proposal is confirmed. Now, the resolution is worded in an open way as to the specific representation arrangements to allow for that.
questions as to how many seats and is it wards or across the Rohi would be issues for the future. The timing isn't ideal, but if we want to make a decision on the proposal in time for the 2022 election, this is what we have to do. I'm assured we can have a fully public process with 4 weeks for submissions and then hearings as required. I propose the motion accordingly as on the screen up there, where we receive the report, we revoke, for the avoidance of doubt, the previous resolution. That's likely to be the net effect of the bill that's currently before Parliament, but we don't know that, and regardless we want to make sure that that is clear. And then to the motion itself, which I've really just outlined, it is to undertake community engagement and consultation on a proposal to establish one or more Māori constituencies, that's the technical term for regional councils, including public submissions to enable a substantive decision on whether to establish those constituencies before 21 May 2021, that date being the deadline if we are to have the proposal considered and able to be confirmed before the next election. So I don't really wish to say anything further than that. And yes, propose the motion accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you. Second.
I'm willing to second the motion.
You wish to speak?
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak?
If I may, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, thank you, Councillor Williams, for putting some thought into the motion. I think we all know the background to this. It's something that's sat on the table for the last 3 years. I think the feelings of the Māori community have been well expressed numerous times in regards to the desire to see the establishment of Māori wards. I appreciate what the motion signals. I think the one thing that is missing from it, and it's not something I'm going to lose any sleep over at this point in time, it's really a clear indication from the councillors themselves as to whether they believe that there should be Māori wards established. I understand about going out to the community and seeking submissions, but where is the guidance from the councillors themselves? I understand the guidance that has come from the officers, and we just need to go back through the papers that have accompanied this particular kaupapa and the recommendations that have come from the officers of this council calling for the establishment of Māori wards. That is kind of missing. I understand there's politics at play here. I understand we're trying to reach a consensus amongst councillors. But also, there has to be some leadership as well. There's an obligation for you to give direction, not only to the Māori community, but to the wider community. Well, what is your position? I think that I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Michelle?
Kia ora, Martin, for putting the resolution together. I just want to note that, as you all know, I think it's about, Leanne, is it 26,000 Māori on the electoral roll, and out of 169,000 or something around there, close to there, and we're going to do submissions, and just want to note that we're already outnumbered. And this isn't a race-based decision, this is a treaty-based decision. And again, we're outnumbered, so we're going to go through submissions, and if the Māori Affairs Elect Committee submissions are anything to go by, they were pretty stomach-churning for tangata whenua to view. But I also noted people who were not Māori, Hauri, and other nationalities that stuck up for Māori, and I appreciate that. Yeah, and Oh, we'll see where this goes. But in the end, you've got to make a decision. Before the 21st of May, are we going to have Mighty Wolves or are we not? Mighty Wolves, if you vote yes, then you vote for equality. You vote for a treaty partnership. If you vote no, what does that mean? Ta-da.
Thank you, Michelle. Any other comment? Or Rick, you can wind up if you like.
Well, I just wanted to respond to Mike. He posed a fair question to councillors, and I thought it deserves a response. Mike, you said that you felt the council should, stake out a ground, and as part of that, I think we've thought about that very carefully. But if you notice, councillors have been very restrained to what was said today, and done so deliberately and thoughtfully, because if we're going to enter into a period of consultation, then we want the public to be aware that we're going to enter into this open-mindedly. And we all have our thoughts about this, but we want to have a fair, open, transparent process of consultation. And so we'll go through that, and at that point we'll come to the deliberation. At that point, we'll have to make a decision.
Any other speakers? Otherwise, Martin, do you want to quickly wind up?
No, I think I've said everything I wish to say. I acknowledge the comments that have just been made, and I just really what Councillor Barker said, we need to travel through this process as a region over the next 2 months, and I'll keep my powder dry until then.
Thank you, Martin. So we have three points in the resolution. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, we will move to item 12, climate change campaign results. So, where's Jim come in?
Jenny, represent you.
Very good. Which would be yellow. It's Marty in there twice. No, Marty. Because wasn't on the end of the
Yeah, that's why I got to put that.
It's out now.
Six zip.
Oh dear.
Thank you. So I wish there was a gossip here. Right, Jenny, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Clever.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. So we're here obviously talking about our climate action campaign and how it went. Rex, are you still happy for us to proceed? Yep.
Yeah, since I've...
Who's the chair?
Yeah, see,
What's going on?
where's his run sheet?
But where's the report on the Māori Committee?
My mistake.
No, it's my mistake, Deb.
And they're fixing the comment
totally
seal.
incompetent.
And the report
I'm
from the
happy.
EICC.
And
We
the
can come back.
EICC
We can come. I was just so excited to hear your report, Jenny. That
okay,
I'm
so we'll come back.
It's okay.
just tears the agenda up.
Okay, we'll go. We'll do you.
Yeah? Okay, all right.
Don't,
For the record.
don't listen to that, what he just said,
I won't
okay?
listen to that.
I think the chair should choose his words more carefully.
I believe so
The
too.
chair should concentrate. That's what the chair should do. Thanks, Jenny.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
It's on the performance review.
So, yeah, look, we're here to talk about our climate action campaign and how it went. I just want to acknowledge my amazing colleague Rebecca, who she can't be here, she's unwell. She would have really liked to be here to present this as we delivered this campaign together. And we have I've got Drew here to support and keep me out of trouble, and also to receive feedback. So we'll cover briefly what we did and why. You have seen that, and we'll also go into a bit of detail about how the campaign worked, looking at things like reach and value, and then we'll look at what we learnt from the campaign, and also from a sort of wider council perspective going through that process. So we presented to council last year on this. This was a 6-week campaign. It was a way to get in front of the community, to educate position the council as the leading local authority on climate change and encourage and enable change around the climate crisis. We used a number of channels.
Sorry, there's one here.
Yeah, that's all right. We used a number of channels, collateral and engagement tools to deliver the campaign. Now the campaign launched, as you'll probably remember, with the results of our survey, our climate change perception survey. That was really successful. I'll go into detail soon about that. And we also launched our Climate Crisis Digital Web Hub. Through the 6-week campaign, we showed the 3 case study videos, like an infographic video explaining the impact of the climate crisis, Youth Environment Council videos, and held 4 pop-ups around the region, plus a climate crisis focused stand at the Better Home Living show. So overall, we were really pleased with how the campaign went and really valued the support we got from councillors. In particular, we were happy with the extensive media coverage and social media engagement. We found some things worked really well and there were others that we just needed to improve on. So media engagement. So the campaign launched on, what we did. Actually I think we need to go further into media engagement. How it worked, and then into media.
Well, who's that? Handsome bloke.
Exactly. So media engagement, launched October 29th and with the results from our local survey, which was really asking the community about the climate crisis and was a really good starting point to gauge people's views. We combined that with an opinion piece from our chair, Rex Graham, in the Hawke's Bay Today, and then our release with those survey results appeared in the Hawke's Bay Today, Dominion Post, Stuff and Bay Buzz. The following week, we released the results of the NIWA report, Climate Change Projections and Impacts for Tairawhiti in Hawke's Bay, and that predicted worsening droughts, crop damage, wildfires and floods, and that appeared in the Dominion Post, Stuff and Hawke's Bay Today. The survey was a really prescient warning, as just a week later we had the flood, 150-year flood it was called, which was a devastating event for hundreds of families. So following that flood, James and Kathleen were interviewed about the NIWA survey and climate change and appeared in multiple newspaper, radio and television pieces. So they appeared across Hawke's Bay Today, Dominion Post, On Stuff, Radio New Zealand, Sarah's Country, Central FM and TVNZ. And then Councillor Williams' opinion piece, Flooding, a Sign of Things to Come, We Must Act, was also published in Hawke's Bay Today. So that was a fair bit of activity that week. In the last week of the campaign, we released our plan to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, and that article appeared in the Hawke's Bay Today. We had 5 opinion pieces in total, including Councillors Graham, Williams, Ormsby, Foss and Foley, and those were published in the Hawke's Bay Today. And then we also got bonus pieces. Councillor Foley's piece was also published in CHB Mail, I think, and Councillor Foss's went into Bay Buzz. So we had a good look at the total reach of our print and TV coverage, and it reached 2.2 million people, which was, a few people, which was good. Now, to have paid for newspaper advertising to get the same sort of coverage in terms of print, that would have cost around $25,000, and that was actually the whole cost of the entire campaign. Now, that value, that doesn't take into account digital, radio or TV, so definitely was worth it. On to advertising. Oh no, we should stay there. Yeah, because that's me. So, advertising. We developed an advertising campaign with a budget of just $5,000, targeting radio and digital. We focused on local radio stations and localised digital advertising with Met Service, and we had a reach of 60,000 with Met Service digital advertising and 302,000 with radio. So that was a really great reach for our budget. So we had a really targeted and intense social media campaign with this, pushing out our key messages using video, images and graphics that reached nearly 10,000 people. we posted 42 times during the campaign on our Facebook page. Some of our more popular posts had some pretty intense conversations going on, and like our graphic video that had 40 reactions and 166 comments. Mainly debates about the reality of the crisis, and then we also had a lot of reactions with the NIWA report, which was great. So 177 conversations there, and that was a big push. Those conversations were around a big push for the regional council to do more really about the climate crisis. We developed 3 video case studies aimed at farmers, communities and business, and also created a graphic video explaining the impacts of the climate crisis on Hawke's Bay. The most successful video was the profile of Wairoa Ngāhere Community Nursery. They're a grassroots community group dedicated to planting native trees and improving waterways. And that video reached nearly 7,000 people on our Facebook page alone, had 14 shares, 4,100 views and 732 engagements. We also had several videos from the Youth and Environment Council involved, with them talking with their friends about the climate crisis and what it meant to them and the future that they wanted to have. Now they weren't as popular as we'd hoped, and we think a closer relationship with the Youth Environment Council and more involvement from them in the campaign, particularly with social media, would have been good. To the web hub, we're still on there. Yep. For this campaign, we created a brand new web hub with pages targeted for different audiences. The hub had over 2,000 unique views during the campaign. Over the same period, the website had 67,000 page views. So it made the hub around 3% of visits to our website, and that's pretty reasonable web traffic. On to the pop-ups. So we ran 4 pop-up events in Wairoa, Napier, Hastings and Waipokoro. The idea with the pop-ups was to meet people on the street and in their own community and talk about their concerns and raise awareness about what we're doing as a council. And the engagement we had with people was meaningful and interesting. We had footpath art, which kind of highlighted the crisis and was a good way to draw in families. And those events were advertised through social media, and I think they broadly went really well. I think a good learning from that though was in the future we go to where people are and bigger events and go there. So we estimate we reached through conversations and engaging, we probably reached around 500 people on the street. And then we went to the Better Home and Living show for 3 days, and we probably talked to reached around 300 people there. So do their names. We think the campaign was successful in that it strongly positioned us as the leading local authority on climate change. It raised people's awareness about the crisis and started some really important conversations on this topic. We were really pleased with the social media and media coverage. I think we would have liked to have more impactful on-the-ground face-to-face engagement with people. And so we've reflected on the campaign and come up with these sort of learnings. Having the support from council was really vital. Your backing and support through social media and at our pop-ups, that really gave us the encouragement and support to build this campaign, so thank you for that. We also appreciated the support from the executive leadership team who came along, and to the pop-ups, and Kathleen and Trevor, who also came along to the pop-ups. So the survey results revealed a lack of concern about the impact of climate change in the region, considerable barriers to personal action and a lack of understanding about the impacts of climate change. And the findings from the survey, as I think we've said before, highlighted the need for the proposed climate change ambassador role and further education. So in reviewing our campaign, we realised the need for better understanding of the community's perceptions and views and issues and problems in order to address them, and the need for a region-wide action plan on this. We couldn't confidently probably say how many people have either changed their minds or are doing more to tackle climate change in their own lives. It also highlighted the need for more sustained long-term engagement with a diverse group of regional stakeholders, including tangata whenua, local authorities, business and environmental groups. So to have far-reaching impact and create the community partnerships required for transformational change, we need to be seen in the community more often and engage the public meaningfully in a more sustained, structured way. We need to go to community events and to where the community normally gather to have more successful engagement. And also, given the importance of the youth perspective on this entire topic going forward, we thought it was really crucial to have youth representation on council as well. So we'll take these learnings with us as we go into the long-term plan engagement, but we also ask that you consider what we've talked about today, what we can do as a council to get to know and better understand what's important to our community and how we can work together to create long-lasting solutions. Now, mihi, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jenny. Questions. I just want to kick off, Jenny.
Yep.
The survey results revealed a lack of concern. And I found that too, that people just didn't get it. No, it's a big hurdle, isn't it, to get people thinking about it.
Yeah, it is. But it's good to have those survey results as kind of like a foundation sort of document to understand where we need the gaps we need to plug, and also what an engagement that we need to do, and we can just look to get better awareness and understanding up there and up those statistics.
Other questions? Yeah. Anyone?
Well, thank you, Jenny, for that piece of mihi, and yeah, you were out there on weekends, you and Rebecca and the team, so yeah, it's a great effort you put in here. I just want to know from this review, the review and the campaign and as a whole, and how this mihi will then translate into the climate ambassador we're looking at through the long-term plan. So where's the alignment there with this piece of work and that position? So just a question for any of the staff.
I think the intent will be to pass it on to that role should it be successful through the long-term plan process.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of learnings there as to the gaps that do need to be filled, and lots of ideas there for the climate change ambassador to take into their role, particularly around that creating a region-wide plan and creating partnerships with key stakeholders, and so I think there's plenty of work there.
I'll just make the observation that I think what we've experienced through this exercise is reinforcement, as the Chair said, of how difficult this area is because of the long-term nature of climate change and the understandable focus that most people are focused on the day-to-day pressures in their lives. And what that suggests is that we need a very sustained effort of engagement that is consistent over a long period of time, and we build that understanding through repetition of messaging, but also reaching more deeply into the community for more substantial and longer term engagement. I think the benefit of having dedicated staff resource in this area will be we will be able to do that. Jenny and her colleagues in the Marcom's team were also doing many other projects simultaneous to this, so it was just part of their overall work program. But dedicated resource will enable that more sustained effort.
Craig?
Mine's a general question to Drew at the end, maybe, so it's not particularly around this survey. So I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going forward, the learnings included greater consultation with the community or engagement with the community. Has there been any thought, consideration of our engagement with the local authority, TAs in the region? I'd be interested, for example, to know what's in their long-term plans around various steps, and I'm just looking myself. There's 101 ways, of 1,000 ways in which we can have to take small steps. But I'm interested in the concerted effort across the TAs. Are we engaging with our TA partners around this and methodology to address it?
So we've had preliminary discussions, and there is enthusiasm about collaborating, but I think in terms of their priorities for their long-term plans, I'm not aware of dedicated resourcing in this area, and I think that's something for us to review as their long-term plans are finalised for consultation, and for us to engage them in discussion on that. Obviously, the state of Three Waters infrastructure in the region is a major priority for our territorial councils, and that's where the predominance of their investment is going, which is putting upward pressure on rates. So we're not seeing, I guess, resourcing swinging in behind, but we're seeing an interest in dialogue.
Sure. Just sort of segueing from the comment there, Mr. Chair, around their infrastructure, I note significant emphasis on, for example, water conservation, utilising rainwater storage, those sorts of. Is there scope to discuss with TAs amongst their infrastructure discussions with their community that we in fact incentivise some way between us those sorts of household type initiatives right across the board? Give one example that might be useful is we use about 1.5 million barrels of oil. We burn 1.5 million barrels of oil making plastics to put in plastic drink bottles. So, you know, have we got that sort of engagement across the community and initiatives that look like that even within their infrastructure plans?
So I would anticipate that a key role, and indeed I think it's the way we've articulated the climate change role in the long-term plan, will be to work with the territorial authorities around precisely those sorts of initiatives. We do have water tanks for households as part of our Sustainable Homes program. What we're not seeing is regulatory support from that by our territorial authorities in their building consenting processes, and I think that is work to do. Particularly out of the tank plan change, there are increased expectations on the territorial authorities in terms of managing demand around water for improved water security. And I think what we do need to see from them is initiatives in response to that. So yeah, I would expect this role will be instrumental in actually building a more substantial dialogue that we don't have enormous capacity to do with our territorial partners at the moment.
Craig, you have a question? Oh, you want to go for Drew?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, through just the campaign learnings, I presume you agree and accept those who've been part of them. We've got quite a bit of surveys, reviews, consultations coming up over the next few months. So what will you be doing generically to apply some of these learnings, so hopefully we have deeper engagement in some of the consultations we've got coming up?
It's a continuous improvement process. So I think in proposing the breakfast event on the 10th of March, I think that's one such opportunity for us to get in front of a really broad segment of the whole community when we go to Toi Toi. So I think that's one example of, I think, pushing the council in front of the community and giving us an opportunity to engage and face-to-face with our community and get their feedback, have a dialogue with them. Equally, the town hall events, which are perhaps a standard piece of our approach around those long-term plan events, but those consultations equally in our respective communities will be a good way to get in front. And the Facebook Live event that we run as a part of our long-term plan consultation to give people who don't want to leave their homes the opportunity still to engage with us as closely as they can. So we'll build all of those pieces in as we go, and we just adjust and adapt as we go through.
Some of those findings are quite specific, actually, some of the learnings.
Yeah.
So you'd be interested to continue that conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. Will?
Thanks, Chair. When we've kind of discussed and debated this in the past, we've talked about the difference between our response and central government response, because climate obviously doesn't stop at our region's borders. So since you started the campaign, central government have announced their own climate emergency or crisis, whatever they termed it. So I imagine as a result of that, they've dropped tools and putting all the efforts into that now. How does that, and this might be more a question more for our CE, but how does that that change what we're doing here? And I'll give you a couple of examples of possible outcomes. You know, are they offering funding now for us to help with our response, or do they take over perhaps what some of the work we might have been proposing?
So they are offering funding for a range of things at the moment that we're engaged in on both, I guess, the climate change adaptation and mitigation side. Examples such as our current engagement with the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority around things like electric vehicles. And I heard just yesterday our fleet manager is engaging Unison and the territorial authorities around a ramp up in facilities around that, which would come with government funding, just by way of one particular example to pick on. We will be watching Budget 21 very closely, because we anticipate, following the government's declaration, that there will be a program of funds that will come forward as part of this year's budget, and that will enable us to put what resources come through our long-term plan alongside theirs, and ramp up engagement with the community. I think generally we are seeing an expectation from central government that there is a partnership with local government around climate change. And I think that recognises that there are significant issues for our local government, particularly in terms of infrastructure, as previously discussed on the adaptation side, but also some of the mitigations around climate change are levers that local government hold, and public transport is just one example. And we have seen the announcement from government as part of their package that they expect a full phase out of diesel buses and a switch to electric buses. Now, obviously, we couldn't fund that presently with our current budgets for public transport, and we'll be looking for supplementary funding from central government to enable us to meet that target.
Any more questions, or do we have a mover? We do? I'll move. I'll second. You'll second. Do you wish to speak, Brett?
Briefly, I'd like to say thank you to the team for sterling effort. I did attend the pop-up one day, and rather than put it as a question or make a comment before, I'd make the observation by way of this, is it was really interesting. I felt the public were in two stratas actually, that the people who were 40 and under were really focused on this, by and large. There were some who weren't particularly, but they were the ones who were focused. Once you got past 40, then the interest in the subject diminished. And in fact, a number of older people had no looking back as to whether their accountability, responsibility, and this, whatever, did not want to see the light change at all, weren't interested in the subject whatsoever. And I just think, with that in mind, we're going to have a two-speed approach to this. I just feel the younger people have got it pretty clear, and our challenge is going to be to get the older generation to feel motivated about this. It's going to be not an easy task, but it seemed to me a number of them had simply made up their mind that they were going to ignore this, and it wasn't going to interfere with their lives whatsoever. But great work, good stuff, and I really appreciate the effort of the staff.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, just very briefly again, thank you for the energy and commitment to that vitally important cause. It's beggars belief that there are sectors of our community who are in denial. I just simply don't understand it. I certainly witnessed that at our pop-up on Market Street, and I guess the only learning I took out of that is that, you know, dealing with these types of issues when people are out shopping and going for a coffee is not the best place. And so I did like your suggestion of going to, you know, home shows and that sort of thing, where people are already stepping out and wanting to participate in that sort of discussion. But thank you again.
Any other speakers?
Chair. Yeah, could I just say thank you to the staff, James and Drew and Jen, for travelling down to Waipakato, because yeah, we always feel like we're at the end of the region down there, and people always appreciate seeing whether other councillors or staff that aren't normally down in that region. So thank you for whatever the reason. Yeah, thanks for the effort.
Thank you, Will. I always get from Craig, the Mayor of Wairau, that he's at the end of the chain, so we have two ends. So
chains normally do.
Just wind it up. Yeah, I really thank you guys. You've done a wonderful job, and we do need to continue to focus on this, because yeah, there's a lot of people not necessarily in denial. There's a few in denial, but there's also people who just don't care less. That's what we are finding. And I think it's not under 40, it's sort of under 20. They are aggressive on this subject. Aggressive. So the older ones will drop off and those new ones will come up, and this is going to be a major topic going forward in the future. So thanks for your efforts. All those in favour of receiving this report? Aye.
I don't wish to exercise my right of reply.
I thought you'd sort of done, you'd made some promises early on today.
Trying hard today, man. Unbelievable. He's even keeping score.
Thank you, Jenny and Drew.
Thanks for bumping us up the agenda.
Oh yeah, that was deliberate, of course. Now we will go back, so we have the recommendations from the, anyways.
Yeah, sure. I'll just take that as read, but my deputy would be happy to know that the staff, the IT staff and strategic staff are working really hard to get our dashboard for our next meeting. Also, I'd like to thank our staff who worked over the Christmas period, particularly around the issues of Chilean needlegrass and pest control. They did a fantastic job, and they keep the machinery working on the ground. So I'd like to thank them. Also to Ben and his team for working with Mangaharerutangi to Hapu and the Tutera community around the planting plan, which we resolved to under 50% on harvest, that forests go back to regenerative and a restoration project really for planting. So I really thank that Opu for the last 2 years of work to bring that to us and for us to resolve to say it is important that we bring our native forests back where we can. But other than that, I'll move that we accept those recommendations.
Just any questions to anyone or staff?
Can I second the motion before we debate them?
We just have questions. You have a question, Craig?
Yeah, two questions actually. Just at the regarding Tutera, which is in the report, and the change of some of our plans there. Just are we confident that there has been good and ongoing consultation and engagement with people in the area, insofar as that and some of the larger issues there are concerned? And secondly, could the finance, Jess, do you have any comment on? I think was it you or Chris sent that further information around the cost to the change in financial circumstances to the council by changing not harvesting, was it 30% or 50% or something? Do you just have any comment to that? Because I presume that email is now an adjunct to this paper.
So I can update on the extra information. So it did come out yesterday afternoon.
Yes.
Now I'm unsure if it's come out.
It's not part of that. No, it hasn't.
It hasn't. So I'll work with you.
Just staple it to it. That's all. Yeah.
We got it yesterday afternoon. So I'll work through that.
So just the headlines there. You've just changed the discount factors or using the council's one, etc. It just puts a quantum around the decision, that's all. I'm not saying we change our decision or anything. It's just there's more information there now as requested, so I really appreciate that. So we'll just let that lie if no one has any questions around that. But that consultation question, do you have any comment there?
Is that anyway or better for James?
Yeah, sorry, not Hanawai's committee, but James.
I'll say this slightly tentatively that whenever we have a complex piece of work involving many people in the community, there's possibly always somebody that doesn't feel like they've been adequately consulted. But I think in this case, it's almost an example of, I guess, a best practice in terms of the extent of engagement with a community group involving a broad range of stakeholders over a sustained period, looking at all of the options, and we went through a multi-criteria analysis with that community group to consider the pros and cons of the ways of going, and got some degree of alignment across most of the stakeholders on it. So I think in this case, it's been job well done.
And so all the culturally significant parts that are impacted by some of our activities, you're confident that they've been respected and looked after? We're doing our best. Sorry, I know you're not on the ground.
To the best of my knowledge. I don't know whether Chris wants to say anything supplementary to that.
Yeah, well, we do have detailed mapping across that site of all the tropical sensitive sites. For one of our projects, which is a sediment firm, we needed to do a bit more work around one particular site, but it looks like that project is no longer so I'm confident through the consultation over the last 2 or 3 years that it comes to the right solution.
Okay, thanks.
And no other questions anyway? You're moving the paper. Seconded by Rick. Any comment to the paper? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Fits in the common seal, Rick?
I so move.
We're still making sales.
Just, Mr. Chairman, can I just confirm that in approving the paper, we approved the replanting of 57 hectares? That's all. Okay.
You second, we're a mover and a seconder for approving the fixing the common seal. All those in favour?
Like to hear from Rick.
Right. You'd like to hear from Rick? No, you don't. That's the vote. You're breaking our kaupapa. Okay, we'll go to report from the Bionic Committee, item 11. Michelle, you were the chair, so you can report, please.
Take it as read. In addition, I note there was a request to note from Whanganui-a-Rotu around the hydrochloric acid village. What the update on that was. What else did we have? I really enjoyed the presentation from the integrated catchment report on anything to do with planting. Love it. You know, and yeah, no, it was really good. I enjoyed it. That was that part, and then we went into the I suppose the other main one was the motion, the resolution that came through out of that discussion about Māori constituency. So the resolution was forwarded as a submission to the Māori Affairs Select Committee on the bill for Māori wards, and that was that the Māori Committee received and considers the Māori representation of Hawke's Bay Regional Council staff report and supports the Council taking immediate action to revoke the previous 18 November 2020 resolution, which has just been done, and also that resolved to establish Māori constituencies for the next 2022 election. That was moved by Peter Eden and seconded by Mada Apatu, and was carried unanimously on the day. So there was full support of that. Anything else you would like to add, Mike?
Yep. Okay, questions for Michelle or Mike or staff on the paper? No questions? You're moving the paper? Yes. Do we have a second? Second by Rick. All those in favour of receiving the Māori committee report?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Received. Thank you very much. Oh, we're racing through now. We've skipped a few things. Discussion.
Climate action campaign results. We've got that next on the agenda.
Yeah, we could do a double up.
Oh, come on.
Discussion.
Obviously, you're over 40.
Items.
Skipped you.
Minor items. Start with you, Martin. Goats.
Yes, thank you. This is partly a good news story due to the real, I guess, the stepping up of our staff. Ellen Beer and Ian have really come to the party on this, but I had a constituent who raised a concern about goats running amok on Hospital Hill and damaging gardens and actually raising a safety concern. And so this is something this particular constituent has spent probably a month on the phone to Napier City Council about, and then approached the regional council, and I'm very glad to hear that I guess, albeit it not being in our Valley WIC, it's more of an animal control than a biosecurity issue. We are going to take a lead on liaising with a contractor and the police and the city council to deal with the particular situation involving these two goats.
There's two.
As I understand it, but I mean, they're actually taking it quite seriously. I mean, this is damaging private property and gardens, and you know these things are intimidating for some people. But it does sort of show that this type of situation happens in urban areas. We have had great success as a council in the past with urban predator control on Ngātaruaho, and I wake up and listen to or hear as I go to sleep the ruru quite often at night at the moment, and the bellbird as a result, and the tui as a result of that. So this does, I think, shine the spotlight on two things: the need for coordination between the agencies, so that when these situations arise, we had a situation with goats all over the road north of Nuhaka just recently that Charlie got involved with the transport agency as well. So, but my message is firstly, thank you to the staff for taking a lead on this, so I can report back to that constituent. But there is a real opportunity here for urban predator control for people who live, and most people do, in the cities, to understand the benefits of that and how we are connected to the environment. And if we do positive things, there is a response that is quite real and tangible, that I think helps the broader effort for biodiversity and biosecurity purposes. So, you know, just encourage all of us to think about opportunities to support those sorts of ventures. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Martin. Mike, National Water.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the privilege of attending the National Freshwater Conference. Pardon the pun, but it was rather refreshing to be in attendance. The main reason being was actually good to get a wider perspective of the issues. Sometimes I feel when we sit in our region, we kind of get a blanket approach to it. We kind of focus on what's happening within our own region, and sometimes don't get a feel for the national flavour that's going on out there. So perhaps my reason for raising it is that perhaps at times we do need to get a wider view, from more of a national view, to help us make the decisions we need to make at a more regional level. And so we're not so blinkered in our thinking. That was mainly my point, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Jareth, Fastgate.
Fastgate,
Sounds
okay.
like a movie.
Where do I start? So, once again, it's a point that I would like to prove here is that Will and I, and I've mentioned it several times now, we went to a field day. And this field day meeting with actually ratepayers and people of the public, farmers in this case, farm foresters day, how much we learned from actually that cohort of people. And once again, this is another thing that actually came out of that particular field day, where the public there, the farmers there present, made it really clear to us that for them to build dams, do anything in the environment, at times is just too costly and too time consuming. And a lot of this this work that they would like to do is actually in aid of the environment. So one of the concepts they talked about was, at every farm where your water leaves your farm, it should be clean. So therefore, build a dam, okay? And then we started talking about building a dam. And it was really funny. This particular farmer, everything he had done that we asked him about was just within the minimum specifications that he didn't have to go for a consent. You know, a dam no taller than 3.9 metres. And I look at this dam and this is at least 6-7 metres, buddy. But that's how he related it. So that actually you could see that it is a problem for them. If they would go to council and say, I've got a really good plan here, I can build this dam. It will store water. It will help us, you know, with flood protection. It will. You could see these dams that they had on this farm. They had a lot of nutrients in them, and they were relatively green. You also could see they actually were catching a lot of sediment, but the consenting process was holding a lot of them to do this. About a year ago, I mentioned I went up to Napitaupa Road where I met a farmer, and he talked about fast gating. It's like a fast gate through the border. In the past, you had to take all your luggage through. You had to be interrogated by immigration, but now you actually could go just with your passport. If you're a businessman, that's all you needed to do, have the right passport, and you were through really quick. And that's how we actually, especially for people who had to go 3 or 4 times through the border, it became really quick. Similar process here. We should have a fast gate consenting process where if you decide to build something that is requiring consent, and you actually apply for that consent, and you actually have some technical sign-off by a consultant, you should actually be able to put the consent in. You go and build it according to the specifications, put the consent in. If it then is not to specification or it fails, it's entirely up to you, but you can go for it. And there is an example. We have Hawke's Bay and another region, 2 similar projects. One will take over a year and possibly cost close to $300,000. Similar in the South Island, 6 weeks process, cost $500. And I asked the person who mentioned this to me, in the RMA, is there actually legislation that you need to take certain steps that actually require us to go as far as we go in Hawke's Bay? And it doesn't seem to be. So I believe, and my question is, can staff look into a process of fast gating, a process consent, especially when it comes to assisting in environment, like building dams, irrigation lakes, and so forth, so that we actually can help the environment, but actually don't stop our farmers and ratepayers from actually doing this really good work that they're intending to do. And also, could we maybe have a look at the process that we take, and is it actually convoluting, just to make sure that we actually ticking the boxes over and over, just to make sure that we completely dissolved from obligation in this particular area. And I understand it. You know, somebody who sits behind a desk can actually sign off on a consent, but it's their job, you know. But we as a council, we've got some obligations here to actually make this an easier process, especially with some of the environmental consents that we're talking about.
Thank you, Sheriff.
I'll give a very quick answer, and that is that yes, we do have the ability to create a framework like that, and I'll give you an example. So on-site wastewater, for example, if you meet the specifications set out by council and you need a consent for an on-site wastewater for a new build, then that's a relatively straightforward process, and the consent is issued low cost, quick turnaround, as long as you meet the specs. With respect to farms on dams, that is an area which...
Dams on farms, yeah.
Dams on farms, sorry. I think that is an area worth looking at in the Kotahi plan change, and whether we can improve the user-friendliness of regulation in that area. So I'm happy to pass it on to the team and come back at a later date with a view on what can be done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of our meeting.
Well, no, you...
our in-public meeting, it is. I think we will break for lunch. And Patty, just for the sake of the public, I think we'll close the public meeting formally. You could? Yes, please.
It's not closed. Just going into
Cheers, just asked
Yeah, I know, but
close our meeting.
Well, we're not closing the meeting.
no. Okay.
Public part of it.
Public part of it. Never mind. We won't do it. Don't mind. We'll break for lunch. Thank you.
Excuse me, before we go to lunch, should I not move that we go into public excluded, so when we come back from lunch, we're in public excluded?
Okay.
That's right, we can relieve John as well.
I'll move that we go into public excluded.
Sheriff will second that. All those in favour?
Just being helpful, Chair. All right.
Our lunches and public excluded.
That's exactly right.
So we can eat with our hands.